We'll take up a new topic. Now the most important activity once after installation is completed you need to perform is taking a backup, and that should be done continuously. It's not just a one-time activity. So let us see the backup of HANA database. So what's the concept involved there? So generally once after your installation is done, if once you connect to the database, the immediate alert message you'll be getting. So it's asking you take the backup of the database, because without a database backup there is a possibility of losing the information, and more importantly, I mean, in case if it's corrupted, there's no way we can recover it. So that's why, as part of the post installation activities, you can consider this one of the immediate tasks you need to perform. So when you're speaking about taking a backup of your HANA database, performing a backup of HANA database, so what are the different options we have? What are the different tools we have to perform the backup? All that we'll discuss today. And one more thing, remember, this is a very big concept, the backup concept we are going to discuss, because we are going to deal with in ZTL way. It's almost 1 week we are going to dedicate only for backup and recovery. Remember that point. Don't try to get everything in a single day. Don't expect everything in one single session. Almost easily it will take 1 week for backup and recovery. It's such a big concept and so much of importance we have. So we'll take things step by step, one by one. So when you're speaking about taking a backup of HANA database, one of the main reason is this. Why do you need a database backup? So basically to avoid data loss due to disk failures. So that's one reason, the main reason. And apart from that, you also perform take the backups for resetting the database. Sometimes you want to reset the database to a previous state, to a specific point in time. That can be done. And uh, apart from that, there's a concept called DB copy, a DB refresh. So that also you can perform. So these are the different reasons why you need backup of a database. So what do you backup in HANA database? So remember that we don't take any backup of the memory. Even though primarily data is stored in the memory, but you can't take the backup of the memory. So what you'll be taking a backup is you take a backup of your persistency layer. So we know what the persistency layer is, your disk storage, so which already we discussed in detail in our architecture class. So, and you know that the persistency layer, the disk storage is separated into two parts, data volumes and log volumes. So you have to take a backup of both. You need data volume backup, you need log volume backups. So as you are speaking about taking a backup of the persistency layer, remember that in HANA database, the backups performed are completely online. There's no concept of offline backups here. It's not like other databases. So here it's purely online backup. Means you'll be able to perform backup only when your database is running. So in case if your database is shut down, there's no way you can take a backup of that. So that's a point you need to remember. It's only online backups, no offline backups here. Okay, so now, as we are saying, we need to take a backup of the persistency layer. So remember that we need to take a backup of the data volumes, log volume backup we need to take. And apart from that, if needed, you can also take a backup of your configuration files. Remember other day when we discussed about starting your HANA database, when I explained you about services, I shown you some configuration parameters. So in case if any configuration parameter is changed, and you want to retain those parameter changes even after your recovery is completed. So you need a backup of those configuration files. What are the changes you're doing in the configuration parameters? All that will be written into the configuration files, INI files. So you should take a backup of those configuration files also. It's not compulsory, but whenever you make some changes for the configuration parameters, it's better you take a backup of those so that you can retain those changes even after the recovery is completed. So these are the three things what you can back up in HANA database. But as is clearly mentioned there, data area. So the data area backup we can take, we can perform. So there is a facility provided to you. A lot of ways you can perform that backup. We have different tools available. I'll show you all those different tools and options available. So that we can do. We can schedule, we can take backups of the data area. But coming to the log area, it's backed up automatically. So that is done by the system itself. So you can't do it on your own. There's just you can just control it by using some parameters. That's it. But you don't have any tools available for that. We don't have any commands available to perform the log area backup. So that is done automatically. So coming to configuration files backup, configuration files backup need to perform manually. No tools, no commands there. Just like if I ask you, like, take a backup of a file, what you'll do? You'll just copy it and keep it in some place. Exactly same thing, just copy and keep it in some other place. So that's what you have to do when it comes to configuration files. We don't have any tools or commands available there as such. Okay, so those are the basic things what you need to remember as far as backup is concerned. So we'll take this one by one. First, let us start with backup of your data area or data volume. Data volume backups. Okay, and when you want to perform a data volume backup, there are many ways you can do it. Even there is a facility for you to schedule it. So I'll list out all those ways of doing it. Data backup or data volume backup, you can say. So that can be performed using HANA Studio. In Studio, there is a facility for you. The second thing, you can do it by using something called DBA Cockpit. Generally, if you are a basis guy, sometimes you might have used this DBA Cockpit. And then the third one is you can use HANA Cockpit. Remember, the HANA Cockpit, using HANA Cockpit for the backups is started only from SPS 10. So it was not there earlier. The Cockpit itself is a new tool. But only from SPS 10 they've introduced taking a backup using HANA Cockpit. Then even you can use some SQL commands. That is, if you want to take a backup, if you want to schedule scheduling, if you want to do scheduling will be different again. So when it comes to scheduling, you can't do scheduling of data area backup using Studio. I'll be able to do it using DBA Cockpit. And you can do it by using HANA Cockpit. This is available only from SPS 12. And third one is you can use a backup script. Not so recommended, but that's also an option available there for you. See, ultimately what you're trying to achieve is same, but there are different options available for you, different ways of doing it. Okay, I'll show you one by one. So before you perform a backup of your HANA database, like suppose I want to take a backup of this, the first and foremost thing, the very first thing is the person who is going to perform this backup should have some privileges. So it's not that anyone can perform the backups. If you want to perform the backups, you need some special privileges. So first look at what are those privileges you need. If you take an example, system user, who is the default user, is basically an administrator, default administrator. And he's having those privileges. He can perform the backup. Like you can see that backup option here, but whereas other users, if it's just a new user you created, so you must have some privileges to perform that activity. See here, this user one doesn't have any privileges to perform the backup. If you try to perform the backup here, you'll get a message like this: you do not have required privileges. So what are those privileges? Generally, you go to that administration guide document, SAP will provide you. So clearly they'll give you the details about those required privileges. Every topic they'll give you that. It's not just about backup. Every single topic they'll give you. Anyhow, as far as backup is concerned here, the first privilege you need to grant here is go to that user. We have security topics separately. In that time we'll discuss, we'll have a detailed discussion on this concept of security, users, privileges, roles and all that. As of now, just go to system privileges. Here we have some built-in system privileges available. Click on plus button. And there you can identify a couple of backup related privileges. One is backup admin, another one is backup operator. Backup admin and backup operator. So either of these two will allow you to perform the backup, but the difference between these two is operator and admin. Person having both of any of these privileges will be allowed to take the backup, but only the backup admin will be able to delete old backups. That cannot be done by backup operators. So additionally, the backup admin is having delete old backups. That additional task it can perform. Can't be done by the operator. That's the only difference you have. So depending on what you want to allow the user to perform, what you want to permit him to do the activities, you choose the assign the respective privilege. So I granted backup admin here. After granting backup admin, say I'm going to user 1 and refreshing this. So even after granting that backup admin, It doesn't have that backup option. And if you try to perform a backup using this menu, the context menu, you'll get again the same error message, a warning message. Do not have the required privileges. So meaning of that is just having that backup admin or backup operator is not sufficient. So we need some additional privileges. What is that? So apart from backup admin, you also need to grant something called catalog read. So the catalog read must be granted either with a combination of backup admin or backup operator. So now look at this. You go to this user one, refresh. Now you can perform that backup option there. And if you try performing the backup here, you'll get that backup wizard. Okay, so this is the first thing. Grant the required privileges for the user who is responsible for performing these backups. Okay, that's done. Now coming to the next thing, when you're speaking about taking a backup, you're taking a copy of the data. So obviously, wherever you're going to keep these backup files, you'll be keeping them external locations. But there you should have sufficient space. So otherwise, while the backup is being taken, if you don't have sufficient space in the destination path where you're specified, it will throw an error. Your backups cannot be completed. So that's why it's better to have an idea about the size, estimated backup size, so that you'll keep that sufficient space in the destination path. Okay, so that's actually pretty easy in the new versions, particularly from SPS 7. If you just go to this backup wizard, just by right clicking, if you go to that backup system, you'll get the backup wizard, and the backup wizard will show you clearly. So you see that here is showing that estimated backup size, showing that 2.91 GB. So that's actually the easiest way of identifying that. But suppose if you're trying to use some commands for performing a backup where we don't have Studio available, then you don't have this wizard, then there's no information like that for you. So in such cases, in fact, actually this information they started providing only from SPS 7. Earlier, we used to get this information by writing some SQL statement. If you want to write that SQL statement, right click on the database, click on Open SQL Console. In this SQL console, you can write your SQL statements actually. So open SQL console. So here you write this statement. Simple step. You're getting that information from the table. The M underscore converter underscore statistics is a built-in table. So these system tables you can find in a schema with the name sys. You can also write like this, because generally database objects we reference with schema name dot object name. Okay, so that's another easiest way of identifying the estimated backup size. And a specialty we have in this is even we can find the information at the volume level also. In the sense, the other day, the last session, we discussed about different processes in your HANA database. So don't assume that all the process holds the data. Like take an example, you have compile server. The responsibility of compile server is just compiling the programs. So it doesn't hold any data. So when you take a backup, you don't have any backup for compile servers. You don't have any backup for preprocessors. So when you're speaking about backup, backup will be there mainly for three processes, three services. So one is the most important, the name server, index server, and access engine. These are the main three processes for which we have the backup. Anyhow, special cases like the day I told you, right? DP server, something like that. If you have, in such cases, there will be the backup for the DP server also. So that you don't consider. That's not default one. So name server, if you take, there's hardly what information you have, host details and landscape details and the data distribution details. So that size is very, very small. So that doesn't change much. Mostly the data backup when you're speaking about, so you need to look at index server and access engine. So that's why you want to find out at that process level what is the size of the backup you can expect. That information also we can get from this table. We can just use this statement like this. Just write volume ID, group by volume. See, actually in this database I have DP server enabled. Don't worry about that DP server. It's not generally enabled or activated in every system. So that we don't consider now as of now. So let us look at only two, even though they are showing three here. Generally, all your databases, when you're practicing, you'll find only two: volume ID 2 and volume ID 3. Volume ID 2 is for your index server. That's fixed number anywhere. Volume ID 2 is index server. Volume ID 3 is access engine. Volume ID 2 index server. Volume ID 3 access engine. Name server, anyhow, they don't show you here. It's a very small size one. Actually, therefore, what is showing is DP server. So I intentionally enabled the DP server here. That's why. Otherwise, default you don't find. It's not a core process. So like this, we can get a bit more detailed information if you want. Because when you perform a backup, it will have a backup for index server separately. You have backup for name server, access engine. So all that you can experience. So that's the next thing. And you have that estimated backup size now. Clearly, you know that. So accordingly, you prepare your destination path. You should have that sufficient free space there. Fine. Now, the next thing what you need to do is before performing a backup of the database, you need to decide on the destination. So where do you want to have this backup files to be? So what is the destination you want to specify? So coming to the destination, so as far as HANA database is concerned, we can say one way, one option, uh, since they support the destination file system. They don't have any other options as such, actually. But when it's like, they don't have anything like tape drives and all that, they don't support here. So they'll have only file system. But apart from that, one useful thing what SAP has done is SAP has allowed the customers to use third-party backup tools. Not only this, what are the options I told you? Even they can use the third-party backup tools to perform the backup of HANA database. Maybe some customers are already using some of those tools. So when the customer want to use the third-party backup tools, it's not that any backup tool they can use, they cannot. SAP is giving a list, certified backup tools will be there. So if your backup tool comes under that certified list, then only you'll be allowed to perform the backup using that third-party backup tool. But when you say third-party backup tool, that's outside HANA database. So if you want to use that tool to take the backup of HANA database, basically there must be a connectivity. So for that connectivity, you need an interface. And that interface, what SAP is offering to you to connect to the third-party backup tools and use third-party backup tools for performing a backup of HANA database, is called Backint, B-A-C-K-I-N-T, Backint. So that's why when you speak about backup destinations, they'll give two options for you. One, file. First one is file system, and the second one is Backint. So when you're saying you're using Backint, means obviously you're saying that your company is using third-party backup tool. So in case if the customer has decided to use the third-party backup tool, we don't know which tool he's going to use. But depending on the tool, how they can use the backend interface, SAP will give you that information. So in such cases, what we have to do is immediately, you need to refer to this note. Given it already in the Dropbox, you can refer to that. There's a tool called Backint, B-A-C-K-I-N-T. This is actually interface, you should call it as, and the SAP note you need to refer to is this 1730932. 1730932. So this is basically using backup tools with backend for HANA. So here they'll give you the details about what are those backup tools they're supporting. All that information is available for you. So if you click on this link, actually it will show you that. Somehow it's missing here. I'll show you. Actually there it will take you to that, the list of certified backup tools. So the partners are certified backup tools you can look at. And those certified backup tools, once you want to use, depending on the tool, those vendors will give you the details about how you can connect to the HANA by using that backend interface. So that's one thing you need to refer to in case if the customer is opting for that. Now another thing is file, as I told you, that's generally what we use. Like if you just go to this console, if you just double click on this backup, you'll have that backup console open on the right hand side. So what do you see when you open this backup console? First it's showing the overview. What is that overview? Showing details about any backup currently in progress. There's no backup in progress now. And it's showing details about the last successful data backup, when it was taken, when it started, when it was finished. Those details is showing here. And apart from that, it's also showing the information about your backup catalog. Means what were the backups taken earlier, the entire list of backups you can find in this backup catalog. These are the list of the backups performed earlier. But before doing that, as I told you, first of all, you need to decide on the destination. You go to the configuration tab. So here, first focus on the left side. We'll go to the log backups later on. This left side, you have data backup details. So here you can see the backup settings for backend, configuration settings for backend in case if they're using the third-party backup tools. So they're written clearly. So to learn how to set up third-party backup tools, so you can use that HANA administration guide documentation. It depends on what kind of tool is that, which tool you are using. And then the second option you have is file-based data backup settings. So if you want to use your destination as a file system, so specify the destination here. This is the path. This is the default path we have. USR, SAP, SID, instance name. Till this I told you in the last session itself. This you should call it as instance directory. So always remember that whenever I'm referring to instance directory, if I say go to instance directory, always remember that path. USR, SAP, SID, instance name. So instance directory slash backup slash data is what is the default path. So you can give any destination path here where you want to have your backup files to be, but making sure that that path you are specifying is accessible in the network file system. So to your HANA database, it must be accessible. You should have that read-write privileges. So then only you'll be able to write this backup data successfully to the destination path. So if you want to give any different path, you can give it. You can change the default path. It's highly recommended to keep these backups outside HANA database. So making sure that it's accessible in the network file system. So if I want to change this, I can change it here. I can change this, for example, from data to data 1. And here there is a save button. You can just click on save. Actually, what we are doing here is we are changing a configuration parameter. So there is actually a configuration parameter, as I shown you the other day. So if you go to this administrator editor configuration tab, so here we have a parameter base path underscore data backup. See that first one. So what is the default path we have? Instance directory slash backup slash data. Now if I change it here and save it, so automatically this change will be reflected in the configuration parameter. See here, if I refresh, what happens now? So this is the new value now. The data 1. So if not there in the console, backup console, you can set it here. You can just right click on this base path underscore data backup and click on change, and here also you can change that value and give a new value. So I'm restoring it to default, and if I'm saving it, we'll go back to that original value. So this is where you can just specify that backup destination path either in the configuration tab of your backup console or maybe the configuration parameter. There's also one more place where we can specify this destination, the backup destination. So that is, when you start your backup wizard, right click on the system here, go to backup and recovery, click on backup system. Your backup wizard is started here. You can see that. So here in this backup wizard also you can specify that path here. But remember that if you specify the path here, this is not permanent. It is not updating your configuration parameter. It's only temporary, and this value what you specify in the backup destination in your wizard, this is applicable only for this execution of the backup. If I close this wizard, that path is not visible to you. So generally that will be helpful for you. Suppose you're scheduling a backup regularly, evening 6 o'clock you're taking a backup, and all those backup files you are putting in one destination path. Or maybe on a particular day for a special purpose you're taking a backup at 12 noon, and that backup you want to keep it in a different location. Only that particular backup for a special purpose you are taking on a particular day. So going to the configuration parameter, making changes, and then taking the backup, again going to the configuration parameter, again resetting it to the old value is all a lengthy process. Instead of that, as that execution of the backup is only one time for a special purpose you are going to do, so you want to keep it in a different location, start the backup wizard and specify that new path here and finish off your backup. So this doesn't disturb your actual backup path you are given in your configuration parameters. So that's the purpose and the reason why SAP has given that option to you. So okay, now your destination is set, and once your destination is set, you can start performing the backup or taking the backup of this database, either just by right clicking on the system here in the HANA Studio if you want to do it, go to backup and recovery, click on backup system, or else if you go to the overview tab in your backup console, here also you have this button, open backup wizard. So both of these will take you to the same screen. So click on that, you'll get your backup wizard. So what do we have in the backup wizard? The first thing you need to select here in this backup wizard is the backup type. What type of backup you want to perform. So earlier till SPS 9, SPS 09, SAP used to support only one type of backup, that is complete data backup. Remember, all this we are discussing is about the data volume backup, the data backups. So till SPS 9, remember this, till SPS 9, the only type of backup they used to support is the complete data backup. But from SPS 10 onwards, SAP has introduced a couple of other options, which we call them as delta backup types. Delta backup types. So there are two types of delta backup types available. One is incremental, another one is differential. So we'll deal with that differential incremental in detail with what is the difference and what is the significance and why SAP has introduced only from SPS 9 earlier what we used to do. All that we'll discuss. But don't jump into that right away. So first, always a simple basic thumb rule you remember. Whenever you're performing a backup of a database first time, compulsory you need to perform a complete data backup. Without complete data backup, there's no way you can perform those delta backups. No incremental, no differential possible. It doesn't make any sense actually there. So the backup type, always first you need to perform as complete backup, data backup. And then the destination, as I told you, there are two options for you. One is file, another one is backend. Choose the destination. This is the destination path. And specify the prefix. Prefix is mandatory. Because as I mentioned, when you take a backup of HANA database, it's not one single file which is getting generated there. There will be multiple backup files. But how do you identify that these are the files related to so and so backup? That's very difficult actually. So to simplify that, they're given a prefix. So as you're using a prefix, all the files will have the same prefix. So that you can identify that, okay, these are the set of files related to this particular backup. So you can give any prefix, but having a prefix is mandatory. And say example, I'm just going with the days, weekdays. Generally, the advantage with this is suppose a customer is planning to have a weekly retention policy, weekly retentions. The advantage with this will be, suppose this Thursday I'm taking a backup by using the prefix Thursday. Next Thursday again when I perform using the same destination path, the previous Thursday files will be overwritten with that. So point is, if you use the same destination, same prefix, obviously the previous files will be overwritten. So that you can maintain that retention policy. So that's an option you have. So you can decide. I mean, it's not mandatory to use this. What are the prefixes you want, you can keep. So click on next. That's it. These are all the details what we have about backup, and click on finish. Your backup will be complete. Now here in this case, this database is having one additional service enabled, that is DP server. So that's why you find 4 files, but actually default it's supposed to be only 3 files: name server, index server, access engine. Now here additionally the DP server we have, data provisioning server. But that don't consider that one. Tomorrow, if anyone asks you in the interviews, you just explain only with those default ones. So now so backup is running, and you can see that in this wizard, or you can see in this overview tab where it's showing the status of currently active data backup, and you can see the details here. And not only there, if you go to your administration editor, in the administration editor, if you go to performance tab, if you go to job progress, it will show you a backup job running there. So generally, as I told you, name server, all these are very small ones. So only the index server is the one which occupies most of your data. And again, I'm repeating, don't worry about the DP server, data provisioning server. When you are practicing, don't look at it because it's not default enabled. So where you should see a backup happening for 3 volumes: name server, index server, access engine. Name server volume ID 1, index server volume ID 2, your access engine volume ID 3. But those we can identify actually, the orders, those details. Once backup is performed, the files will be generated. So here you can see that all the volumes were backed up, and you can click on open log file. It'll show you a log file with name backup.log. This is your backup.log file. Name server 1, index server 2, access engine 3, showing that here. These numbers. But in that way, you should see only 3 files. In this server case, 4 files. But additionally, there is one more file with the number 0 also you'll get, like this. Volume. 0 also. That's called actually name server topology. Anyhow, to find out that information once this backup is completed, so you come to your backup console overview showing that last successful backup happened. Don't worry about this date and time. There we have slightly different times there. In the server is the server types. So uh, here, if you click on this more information, it will take you to the backup catalog. So here in the backup catalog is showing the details for you. So if you select the backup, on the right hand side you have all the details. So even though we are given prefix, there is an ID generated by the system. It's hardly you can remember that, so don't worry about that ID, but system uses that. The status of that, backup type, destination, started, finished, how much time it has taken, the total size and throughput. If throughput is more, the time taken will be less. So it depends on the network where we are keeping your backups and all that. And there's the location, and see this. This is the first one. Thursday is your prefix underscore the data backup underscore 0 underscore 1. This underscore 0, basically that represents your volume ID. The 0 is for name server topology, 1 is for name server volume, and 2 for index server, 3 for access engine, and 4 anyhow is just an optional thing for DP server. Don't worry about that. So you come across that 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Topology means only just basic information like host details and all that. That's why it's very small file there. So that will be there for name server only. And you can also see that information, I mean these files in the file system level. I'm just using FTP tool. So you can also connect using this FTP tools, whichever the system you're working with. Anyhow, everything is shown there, but still file system level you want to check. So we know that the destination path, that's USR, SAP, SID, instance HDB00, and that is same as slash HANA slash shared slash SID HDB00. Both are same. And under that you have backup, the data. Here we have the files. So these are the backup files. Okay, so that's how you take a first backup of your HANA database. Close this. So in case if you close that wizard, afterwards you want to look at the backup log, just double click on the system, you'll get administrator editor. Here you go to diagnosis files. Here you can find your backup log. Here it is. The file system level, if you want to find it, you can find it in this path. Here. USR SAP SID instance directory slash hostname. So there you can find backup.log. Okay, so this is how we'll be performing backup of HANA database. Okay, so this is just only a big